music and more. Follow, subscribe, stay up to date. Episodes dropping one of these days.
It's the man, watch that. It's the man, watch that. It's the man, watch that podcast.
Welcome to the Matt Watch That podcast, the place for reviews, rants, and randomness. I'm your host, Matt Seroski, filmmaker, film fan. This is a special edition of the podcast where we will be talking about Stranger Things Season 5. If you haven't seen it yet, spoilers ahead. To join in on the conversation, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what I should see next, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Before we start, series finales are a huge deal in television writing, arguably the most important episode next to the pilot. They're where all the character arcs, plot lines, and themes that have been building over the course of several episodes, or even seasons, come to a head. Done right, a series finale can elevate a show and leave audiences emotionally satisfied. Done wrong, it can feel like a letdown, or worse, alienate the audience. Some key elements that make a series finale impactful is the emotional payoff. It's a culmination of long-running plot lines, whether it's a romantic relationship, a personal journey, or a battle against a villain. It's the moment where everything comes together and the emotional weight of the season and the series arcs are felt. Series finales also gives a sense of resolution, wrapping up major storylines while also leaving the door slightly open for the audience to interpret for themselves. They're also a great place for big twists or reveals that change the interpretation of the show, whether it's the revelation of a long-hidden villain, a betrayal, or a character's true motivations coming to light. A good series finale should also provide closure to the main characters' arcs and the show's broader themes. It can deal with everyone's personal growth and how they'd become full circle, even if it's bittersweet. The thematic closure can leave the audience with a lasting emotional impact, even if not every plot point is neatly wrapped up. The best series finales often feel like a reflection of everything that came before, but with a sense of escalation. They're not just final episodes in the traditional sense, but an integral part of the show's storytelling structure. Some of the most talked about season finales in television history include The Sopranos, Made in America. Few finales have sparked as much debate as this episode, ending not with a resolution, but with an abrupt cut to black. The episode challenged the audience to confront the uncertainty that defined Tony Soprano's life. Then you have series like Breaking Bad and The Wire, whose finales felt both emotionally satisfying and true to the story's moral weight. Then you had some clunkers, with Game of Thrones, The Iron Throne, perhaps the most infamous finale of the modern era. The show collapsed years of careful character development into a hurried conclusion. What had been prestige television at its peak ended as a cautionary tale about rushing a story to the finish line. And then, of course, you had the What the Hell Is That with the Dexter finale, which ignored the moral reckoning the show had been teasing for years. Instead of consequences or catharsis, viewers were left with baffling character decisions and a final image of a lumberjack Dexter that felt tonally disconnected from the series. I bet the writers wish that they could do a St. Elsewhere ending, where it's revealed that the entire series might have existed in a child's imagination. I know a lot of people were disappointed in the Seinfeld finale, and I understand that, but I actually enjoyed seeing all of the characters that made such a big impact on one or two episodes come back and tell Jerry, Elaine, George, and Kramer what awful people they are. 6 Feet Under is often cited as the most emotionally powerful series finale ever. By showing the future deaths of its characters, the episode transformed grief into acceptance. It was bold, cathartic, and deeply human, an ending that reframed the entire series as a meditation on life's impermanence. And we'll end on a high note, MASH. Goodbye, farewell, and amen. Watched by over 100 million viewers, MASH's finale remains one of the most significant TV events ever. Balancing humor, sorrow, and reflection, the episode captured the emotional toll of war without glorifying it. Its scale and sincerity helped define what a television finale could achieve. Now I'm heading off to watch the finale of Stranger Things. Alright, we are reviewing Chapter 8, The Right Side Up. The group of Joyce, Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, Robin, Mike, Will, Lucas, and Dustin climb the WSQK radio tower to venture into the abyss. 11, Kali, and Max dive into Henry's psyche to prevent him from fusing their reality with the other world. Their plan unravels when Henry sheds his human form, becoming Vecna, and manipulates Hopper into severing their connection. Through Will's visions, the truth of Henry's past is revealed. His corruption began with the fragment of the Mind Flayer, a darkness he ultimately accepts. As the Mind Flayer manifests its colossal form, 11 and Will finally strike Henry down while the others bring the creature to an end, rescuing the children and closing the nightmare. Back in Hawkins, the group destroys what remains of the Upside Down, only to be briefly detained by Dr. K when 11 chooses to remain behind, sacrificing her place in their world. 18 months later, normalcy is returned. Hopper asks Joyce to marry him. The young adults reminisce on the rooftop and promise to meet up once a month. And the teens move forward with graduation and play one last game of Dungeons and Dragons. So what did I think of the finale? I wasn't overwhelmed, I wasn't underwhelmed, I was just whelmed. It didn't have the emotional impact that I was expecting from the first part of the finale. When Vecna died, I expected to feel adulation, like hell yeah! This 5-season battle has finally come to a close. But they tried to humanize him, and his battle with Elle was too anticlimactic. I'm glad Joyce was able to finish the story by taking Vecna's head, but I would have liked to see the characters acknowledge that they knew each other at one point. But all the flashbacks to the previous seasons, with all the trauma that the characters faced, was a great moment of closure. Elle sacrificing herself did seem inevitable, but it was still sad nonetheless. You feel bad because her life was filled with such tragedy from the very beginning, and also felt empathy for the other characters because they loved her so much. I liked the epilogue, though I thought it did run a little too long. The book ending with Rock and Robin explaining what has happened in the past 18 months was a nice callback, but once you know the state of the characters, you close that chapter. I felt like it dragged a little bit. But to be honest, I don't have a problem with spending a few more minutes with these characters. There were a couple of nice moments that I'll highlight throughout the rest of this episode, but specifically here, I know that I thought a lot of people should die. But the Duffers have always been reluctant to kill off characters. I mean, they couldn't even kill off Ted. And the Steve tease made for an intense moment. I liked that Jonathan saved Steve. That was a nice character building moment. But if you are going to off one of your characters, you want it to be in a meaningful way, not as a throwaway. Steve falling off a radio tower isn't exactly a heroic moment. It still got me. This was the first time that I thought, did they really do it? But no, of course not. Then when Hopper thought he was shooting at Vecna, and he actually shot the tank with Elle, I audibly said, no way, did he just kill Elle? That was actually a great fake out. And it would have been such a tragic end for Elle and Hopper. So I'm kinda glad they didn't go down that route, but I still like the surprise. Now, when all the kids are being saved in the Mind Flayer, after Derek hugs Steve, Steve says, we'll get you home. But we still don't know if the family is still locked up in the barn or not. Did they survive? Aren't they hungry? There was a funny moment between Mike and Nancy when he begged his sister for a gun, and she gives him one, only to be told by Lucas that it's a flare gun. Alright, we're going to jump into some criticisms. Out of the entirety of Season 5, I think I have the most problems with this episode. There are certain aspects that I'm willing to overlook. Sometimes fans look at production mistakes and go, oh my god, that's a sign. There's a deeper meaning here. And it's like, no, that was just a PA's mistake. It happens. On every series, every movie. In Jurassic Park, when the T-Rex turns over one of the Jeeps, you can actually see a key light on a stand in the background. And this is Spielberg we're talking about. What type of superhuman strength does Derek have? Not only was he able to block the door from 3 or 4 military soldiers from barging in, but he was able to pull Holly into the cave away from Vecna's grip. I know this point seems a little petty, but it also seems very unlikely. Now this is my biggest criticism. This is the last episode, the series finale, and you choose to have a shortened opening title sequence, no cast, and the song isn't even edited smoothly. There is a clear cut in the music. Why would you do that? I have no proof or metrics to back this up, but I guarantee that the title sequence for Stranger Things is the least skip introed ever. I guarantee at least 83% of people will sit through that opening title sequence and never hit that button. In the first episode of these special edition podcasts, I talked about how intense the battle was in The Sorcerer, and that led me to believe that the finale was gonna be epic. Yeah, that didn't happen. To a certain extent, it kinda makes sense, because in Season 4, we see that 5 or 6-year-old Eleven defeated Henry and created the Upside Down, so she was always more powerful than him. And even if both Eleven and Henry's strength has grown since then, she's still light years ahead of him. So I understand why the battle with Vecna didn't last super long. And when you have an entity like the Mind Flayer, I'm sure that the Duffers didn't want the group also facing off against Demogorgons and Demodogs and Demobats. But there was absolutely no sign of any of those things. Not even a pile of demo crap somewhere. So I just thought that was odd. I think that the special effects have been really impressive this season, but many of the scenes in the Abyss was clearly blue screen and video game-like. And during the battle with the Mind Flayer, when the characters are running around, it looked cheap and unrealistic. I know. I'm grousing about the realism of a monster in an alternate world. I get it. Now, on to Prince. I don't go deep into the Prince catalog. I like the singles that I've heard over the years, and I've listened to the Purple Rain album more than once and less than 50 times. But I wasn't a fan of the choice of When Doves Cry or Purple Rain. From Prince's estate side, it was a no-brainer. I mean, look at what they did for Kate Bush with Running Up That Hill. But does Prince really need a boost? When you listen to the lyrics of Purple Rain, it definitely was appropriate for the scene between Mike and Eleven. But did it fit? And that's where I'm not sure. I would have rather had a song that had more meaning to the relationship of Mike and Eleven versus a song that was about the situation that they were experiencing. And I know I bashed on Byler's last episode, but I'm not on 11 either. I think the show was always leading to Mike and Eleven being together, because that's literally the only storyline they gave Mike. But there had to have been another song that felt like the culmination of their journey throughout these 5 seasons. I'm not sure that Purple Rain was it. And when I think of that song, I think about the scene in the movie Purple Rain. Similarly, When Doves Cry is another example. Did it fit the situation? Why not Let's Go Crazy? This felt like a celebratory moment. They defeated Vecna, the Mind Flayer, they're gonna blow up the Upside Down. This is party time. And a song about parental trauma doesn't exactly fit the mood. I feel like a lot of the music selections throughout Stranger Things weren't the most obvious choice. Yes, there were some big 80s hits in the show, especially at the Snowball, but I feel like many of the tunes were like, oh man, I haven't heard this song in so long. What has that band been up to? So I think I would have rather had under-the-radar hits that were more appropriate for the situations. And my last real criticism was that there was no explanation about the military. Once 11 was gone, they were like, oh well, our hands are clean of that. And they just packed up and left. Like, Hopper and Nancy killed a couple of soldiers. They weren't brought up on any charges or arrested. I mean, maybe off-screen, Hopper and Nancy told Dr. K, Hey, we're ICE agents. We can kill anyone we want. But no consequences. And Hopper goes back to being chief of police. Alright, some of my favorite quotes from this episode. We got one from Erica, naturally. This situation demands cussing. We got one from Vicky. Can you please tell me that was one of you guys and not more of those like mutant Cujos? And near the end of the episode, you have Hopper. It's not the Godfather. I liked the ending prologue. It does wrap things up. At graduation, you have Dustin as a valedictorian, living out Eddie's dream of giving the principal the finger. You got the rooftop scene between the young adults. But I think anyone who saw that scene between Jonathan, Nancy, Robin, and Steve said to themselves, how long before they stop meeting once a month? It just happens. You have these plans, and life gets in the way. You work late, your partner wants to go out, gives you a guilt trip, or you're just tired and come up with an excuse. But I'd like to think that their bonds are so strong that they'll give it a go for a couple of months before they start petering off. Then you have Hopper and Joyce finally getting their date at Enzo's. Now I know that Hopper mispronounced something on the menu, but I would have liked it to be a Chianti. That would have been a great callback. And then the Dungeons and Dragons scene. This was the only way they could have ended the series. The core four, along with Max, playing the game. I really do love bookends, and this was great. And yes, I turned into a weeping willow. It was really beautifully acted, and it's probably because they weren't acting. I mean, there were tears streaming down their faces. This was very real to them. It was a nice moment having each of them, one by one, putting their Dungeons and Dragons binders on the shelf, with the kids' theme underlying the scene, which is second only to the main title's song in popularity. It reminded me of a quote from Stand By Me, the last thing that Gordy types into the computer. I never had any friends later on, like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, does anyone? I had every intention of seeing this episode in theaters, but when I went to get my tickets, every showing was packed, and I started to get a bit of a panic attack, because I didn't know how emotional this episode was going to make me. This show does have that effect on me. In Season 3, after we thought Hopper had died, and Elle is reading his letter, I bawled, tears streaming, couldn't even hide it if I wanted to. And I didn't need to have that moment in theaters with a bunch of strangers. So this is what I decided. I was going to watch the finale on New Year's Eve, see how I react to it, and if I'm not a sobbing Susan, I'll go on New Year's Day and watch it in theaters. So, since I was just whelmed by the finale, I decided not to go. And it's actually my regret of 2026. First day of the year, instant regret. Because how many times can you say that you got to see your favorite series on the big screen? Now, it might happen more often, as theaters are looking for any stunt to get people to come, but Stranger Things was really a pop culture moment that I don't think we're going to see again for a while. I know there's a lot of pressure on creators and showrunners to really stick the landing in a series finale, especially one that's popular. I think that's why so many finales fall into some tropes that even I was susceptible to. Because one of them are deaths. There's nothing more emotionally taxing than losing someone you love, or in this case, characters that you've grown to love. So when they die on screen, it's a real gut punch, and it gives you all the feels. On the other side of things, many shows will end with the birth of a child or a wedding, a happy occasion that gives the audience that dopamine hit that leaves them satisfied. Then you have the in-between trope, people moving away. It's sad because the audience isn't going to see them in the places that they've grown accustomed to being in, but you can imagine for yourself the new life the characters will have in a different place. I think science fiction series have the biggest crosses to bear, because by the time you get to a finale, especially of a long-running series, it's almost impossible to address every plot hole, to answer every question, and package things up with a neat bow. I think the main problem is that these series always get too big. There's always this need to add more characters, put in more storylines, make the mythology or lore much bigger than you can actually handle. Think about some of the biggest sci-fi series in the past 20, 30 years. Lost. It started out as people stranded on a deserted island after a plane crash. Then it became black smoke, time travel, alternate timelines, polar bears. The X-Files, one of my favorite shows. 2 FBI agents trying to discover the truth about aliens. That turned into government conspiracies, black oil, super soldiers. And of course, Stranger Things. A small town boy goes missing and the mother wanting to find him. Then we get into mind flayers, Vecna, military. It's tough to balance, because you can't stay that small, intimate show for the entire run of a series. But that also doesn't mean that it becomes so big that you lose sight of its core. I was watching an interview with Phil Rosenthal, who's the co-creator of Everybody Loves Raymond. Now, I know we're talking about 2 different genres here, sci-fi series and a family sitcom, but I think there are some similarities in the approach. He said when they were approaching the series finale, and this was a show that went on for 9 seasons, 210 episodes, he wanted to treat the last one as if it's just another episode. They didn't want to do anything extraordinary or over the top. They didn't want to fall into one of the tropes that I had mentioned. They wanted to treat it like another episode because that's what's worked. And they did do a little borderline trope, but in the end, if you watch that episode, it does feel in line with every other episode that they did for the previous seasons. Since its debut in 2016, Stranger Things has become more than just a show. It's a cultural phenomenon. From its unforgettable characters to its suspenseful plot, Stranger Things taps into something deep within the hearts of its viewers. At its core, the show is a love letter to the 1980s, an era brimming with iconic films, music, and pop culture. For viewers who lived through the decade, the show offers a sense of nostalgia, reminding them of the magic of movies like The Goonies, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Stand By Me. But it doesn't just lean on nostalgia for its own sake. The show uses the 80s setting to evoke a sense of innocence and adventure that contrasts sharply with the dark, supernatural events unfolding in Hawkins, Indiana. One of the biggest reasons Stranger Things resonates with the audience is the strength of its characters. The show doesn't focus just on one protagonist, but offers a balanced ensemble cast. At the heart of the series is a group of kids. The friendships between Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas are at the emotional center of the show, and their dynamics ring true for anyone who's experienced the intensity and beauty of childhood friendships. The show doesn't shy away from the messiness of adolescence, awkward moments, broken hearts, and the inevitable changes that come with growing up. Stranger Things created a haunting atmosphere with subtle tension and builds suspense around the unknown, the upside down. An alternate dimension that's creepy and foreboding becomes a place where viewers are constantly on edge, unsure of what might come next. In short, Stranger Things works because it taps into multiple layers of entertainment: nostalgia, horror, mystery, and deep emotional connections. It's a perfect mix of the familiar and the strange, the supernatural and the human. Whether you're drawn in by the nostalgic references, the compelling characters, or the heart-pounding suspense, there's something for everyone in Hawkins, Indiana. That's all for this edition of Matt Watch That. Thanks for listening to me babble. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what movie or TV pilot I should see, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Head over to mattseroski.com for all the latest news and updates, and come back next time for the reviews, rants, and randomness. All right, we are reviewing Chapter 8. Please ignore the pause. Climb the WSQ... A happy occasion to give the audience that dopamine hit. Dopamine?